Jala Sil attempted to humiliate me at my husband's celebration after we revealed my pregnancy, but her plan backfired disastrously. Now, she's not only facing jail time, but also going through a divorce. I, 29F, have been married to my husband Harry for the past 7 years. I adore everything about our marriage, except for his sister Kayla, who constantly brings negativity into our lives. Now, don't get me wrong. I used to genuinely like Kayla when I first met her, but my perception shifted drastically over time. She is incredibly pessimistic, manipulative, and toxic. For years, I went out of my way to stay on her good side because I understood the type of person she is. In the past, my husband had dated Kayla's closest friend when he was 17, but they eventually broke up because he felt pressured into the relationship by his sister. When he was 23 and single, Kayla insisted he date another one of her friends, but he refused. This led to a huge argument, with Kayla running to their parents in tears, insisting that she wanted Harry to marry someone she approved of. However, their parents paid no mind to her complaints. When Harry and I met and fell in love, his parents were very supportive, but Kayla made her disapproval painfully obvious. Every time I was around, she treated me with a cold demeanor. She frequently brought up Harry's ex-girlfriends for no reason, talking about how well they were doing and suggesting he reconnect with them. This went on for a while, and even Harry found it bizarre. He eventually asked her to stop bringing up his past relationships, but instead of respecting his request, Kayla got angry and mocked me, claiming I was insecure and that Harry deserved someone more confident. Whenever Harry's parents invited us over for dinner, Kayla would purposely invite one of his exes, pretending that she had just run into them that day and felt obligated to extend an invitation. She also obsessively monitored my Instagram, even though she didn't follow me. Since my account is public, I noticed she was always the first person to view my stories. If a guy commented on my photo, she would immediately run to Harry, accusing me of posting inappropriate pictures. Harry and I found her accusations laughable. When Harry and I decided to move in together, she tried to convince him to break up with me, listing all my supposed flaws and insisting she could find him someone far superior. That comment stung because, despite everything, I had always been kind to her. Unfortunately, when Harry and I got engaged, Kayla's behavior worsened dramatically. During our engagement party, while everyone was congratulating us, I noticed Kayla was eerily silent. She then abruptly stood up and left, shocking everyone. Later, she called Harry, crying and screaming about how she was offended that she wasn't the first to hear about his engagement. She believed she deserved exclusive knowledge before anyone else. She later sent me a borderline threatening message, demanding that I be a good wife to her brother, since she had always been the most important woman in his life. The message was so disturbing that I literally cringed. I didn't bother replying and left her message on read, knowing it would infuriate her further. Kayla gradually began ignoring me whenever we crossed paths, yet she remained deeply involved in all the wedding preparations. She criticized every aspect of my wedding, from my dress choice to the decorations, despite both my future mother-in-law and fiancé calling her out multiple times. Her behavior persisted. One day, while I was discussing wedding centerpieces with my future mother-in-law, Kayla eavesdropped and immediately mocked me, calling my taste classless. She went on to say this was why she had wanted her brother to marry someone more refined. That was my breaking point. I snapped. I screamed at her, telling her I could no longer tolerate her constant insults and criticisms. I made it crystal clear that she was no longer invited to our wedding. Kayla was stunned, gasping in disbelief, as if she had never imagined I would stand up to her. Even my mother-in-law was outraged by her behavior and sided with me. Later, Kayla begged Harry to control me, claiming I had humiliated her. But Harry stood by me and told her that unless she apologized, she would remain uninvited. Begrudgingly, she sent me a long-winded apology, which I once again left on read. Eventually, I allowed her to come to our wedding, not because I wanted her there, but because I didn't want her to spread rumors about us afterward. On the big day, everyone respected our pink and pastel theme, except Kayla. She showed up in a floor-length black gown with a veil, as if she were attending a funeral. We were shocked. She went around dramatically telling guests that she was mourning the loss of her brother to another woman. During the reception, Harry noticed how uncomfortable I was and confronted her. She played the victim, insisting she had the right to wear whatever she wanted and that I was being controlling. In the end, my mother and father-in-law asked her to leave when she wouldn't stop causing a scene. It was embarrassing. And from that day forward, I kept my distance from her. When I gave birth to our son Nate, I refused to let Kayla near him. She tried to fight it, but my husband and his parents fully supported my decision. They understood exactly why I didn't want her around my baby. 2 years ago, Kayla had a miscarriage with her then boyfriend Jamie. It was a devastating time for her, and both Harry and I felt genuinely sorry for her. Since we already had a child, we decided to be more forgiving. We invited her over so she could bond with Nate. At first, she was surprisingly kind to him. For a while, I thought she had changed. But over time, her old personality resurfaced. She constantly complained about her life, blaming ex-bosses and former friends for all her problems. She never took responsibility for anything and was always trying to manipulate people into siding with her by playing the victim. This year, Kayla decided to get married and excluded us from the guest list. Harry was stunned, thinking our relationship had improved. When we confronted her, she claimed that she couldn't risk inviting me because she was afraid I would steal the spotlight at her wedding. I called her and asked why she would assume I would do such a thing. She admitted that she had purposely worn black to my wedding, and now she was worried I would seek revenge. And that's when I realized Kayla was never going to change. I was enraged by how deceptive she was and directly told my husband about it. Harry spoke with his parents, and they decided to inform Sael that they would neither finance the wedding nor attend it. This devastated Sael, and she broke down in tears, blaming me for orchestrating this disaster. My husband firmly reminded her that she had brazenly admitted to her wrongdoing, so she had no right to shift the blame onto me. However, Kayla defended her actions, saying our wedding had happened a long time ago and I should simply let it go. Later, since Phil and Mill were still adamant about not covering her wedding expenses, she reached out to extend an apology and plead for my forgiveness. As much as I hate to admit it, Kayla can be charming and convincing when she wants something. I forgave her and decided to move forward, leaving the past behind. Her wedding with Jamie went well, and we all attended, enjoying the celebration. However, less than 6 months later, Kayla was at our doorstep, lamenting how her marriage was crumbling. Harry and I allowed her to stay with us for a few days, during which she would rant for hours about her husband. They were struggling with conceiving, and Kayla was entirely blaming Jamie. I tried to talk to her, but she was unwavering in her belief that it was solely his fault. When she wasn't complaining about Jamie, she became overly fixated on our lives, even fabricating things that didn't exist. For instance, I usually go to the gym every morning before work. If I was running late, I would bring my work clothes so I could freshen up, shower, and change afterward. Sil noticed this and began probing me with numerous questions, such as why I needed to shower or why I even bothered going to the gym. I didn't think much of it and casually explained that I liked maintaining my physique and didn't want to arrive at the office sweaty and uncomfortable. She would simply press her lips together and nod. Eventually, things improved between her and Jamie, and she moved back in with him. One weekend, my husband and I went to lunch with Mill and Phil, where Sile and Jamie had also been invited. We left our son Nate with a babysitter since he usually found it tedious when adults sat around talking for hours. During lunch, Mill was sharing a story about a friend who had recently divorced after her husband betrayed her trust. She explained how the woman had left him and taken half of his assets. Out of nowhere, Sil abruptly asked my husband if we had signed a prenup before getting married. The entire table fell silent as we turned to look at her. She completely ignored my presence and stared at my husband, expecting an answer. Now, my husband isn't one to sugarcoat things, so he bluntly told her that since we both earned well, we saw no reason to get a prenup. Sil scoffed and began talking about how there are so many cheaters nowadays and that my husband could be blindsided at any moment. I was insulted by her words and asked her to clarify exactly what she was implying. That's when she boldly declared that I must be seeing someone else since I was always carrying a change of clothes, and as Harry's sister, it was her duty to warn him. I was stunned by her audacity. Phil and Mill immediately came to my defense, scolding her for making such baseless accusations and telling her to stay out of other people's business. Without skipping a beat, Sil went on, claiming she was only looking out for her brother. Then, as if she hadn't already crossed the line, she insinuated that our son, Nate, might not even be Harry's, since he didn't look exactly like him. I swear, I watched my husband's face turn crimson with rage. I had never seen him this furious before. He locked eyes with Kayla and told her that this was exactly why she wasn't a mother yet, because she didn't deserve to be one. He added that her unborn child was better off in heaven than having a mother like her. Kayla's jaw dropped in shock. Mill and Phil sat there, speechless, as my husband unleashed his fury, calling Kayla a shameless troublemaker who tried to wreck everything in others' lives because she had nothing worthwhile in her own. He continued, saying that instead of interrogating us about prenups, she should focus on her own failing marriage because she was clearly projecting. Kayla burst into tears and started sobbing uncontrollably. She turned to Jamie for support, but he remained completely silent. I had never seen my husband lose his temper like this before. Eventually, she stormed off to the restroom. My husband was still seething, and Mill came over to soothe him while I gently rubbed his hand. He apologized deeply for what his sister had said about our son, and I simply nodded, understanding how exhausting she could be. In a way, I was relieved that my husband had publicly defended me, considering how much I had endured from Kayla over the years. Once he cooled down, he offered an apology to Jamie, but completely ignored Kayla. After that day, we went back to having zero contact with her. Her behavior was not only impacting me, but was also taking a toll on my husband. We blocked her everywhere, preventing her from reaching out to us. Mill and Phil later discussed the disastrous lunch with us and agreed that Kayla had gone too far this time. They had never seen their usually calm and collected son lose control like that. But Kayla had relentlessly pushed him. It has now been a year since we last spoke to her, and life has been peaceful. 2 months ago, I discovered that I was expecting a complete surprise since we hadn't been trying. My husband and I feel incredibly grateful to be welcoming another member to our family. We plan to share the news on my husband's birthday. Mill and Phil wanted to celebrate Harry with a grand gathering in their backyard, inviting close friends and family. Sil must have heard about the event through others and decided to make an appearance. My husband and I were shocked when she arrived. She rushed over, hugging Harry and telling him how much she had missed him and how deeply sorry she was for their last conversation. My husband firmly gripped my hand and told his sister that her apology was owed to me, as she had attacked my character. Turned to me and apologized. She explained that she had been in therapy for months and had finally realized how wrong she was for humiliating me like that. I didn't believe a single word she was saying, but I didn't want to appear impolite in front of everyone, so I simply nodded. Mill and Phil checked in on us and reassured us that they had no idea she would be attending. They assured us that if we felt uncomfortable, they would ask her to leave since this gathering was meant to celebrate my husband. However, Harry didn't want to create a scene, so we chose to overlook it. Throughout the party, I noticed Sil chatting and laughing with everyone, which seemed somewhat unusual. She appeared overly cheerful, completely out of character for her. But since she had mentioned attending therapy, I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. When it was time to cut the cake, Harry delivered a heartfelt speech, expressing how fortunate he felt to have another year with a wife like me. His words made me blush with happiness. I couldn't help but cherish the fact that my husband and I were still profoundly in love, just as we had been when we first started dating years ago. Then, Harry and I decided to share some thrilling news. With radiant smiles, we announced that we were expecting a baby. It took a moment for everyone to process before they erupted in joy. My mother started crying as she rushed to hug me, and Phil had tears streaming down their face while congratulating both me and Harry. The entire room buzzed with excitement, with people eagerly asking if we had thought of baby names yet. The only unsettling presence was Sil. She stood frozen in shock. At first, I assumed she needed time to absorb the news, but then her expression shifted and she abruptly walked away, visibly upset. A wave of unease washed over me. I worried she might ruin yet another special moment for us. However, I soon became distracted by the influx of guests coming over to talk to me. When it was time for lunch, I got up to assist my in-laws with bringing out the food, but Rick and my parents insisted that I remain seated. They urged me not to lift a finger, reminding me that I needed to take it easy. As I patiently waited for my husband to bring me a plate, Sil approached me with a beaming smile. She held a plate of food and handed it to me, loudly declaring that she personally wanted to serve me as a gesture of happiness for my pregnancy. As she passed me the plate, she even made a remark about wanting to make amends for all the times she had treated me poorly in the past. I nodded and graciously accepted. She then walked away. Just as I was about to take a bite, I thankfully noticed that my plate contained shrimp. It was widely known among my family that I had a severe shrimp allergy, so I was stunned that Sil had even included it. Shaking my head in disappointment, I decided to get my own food. At that moment, Jamie approached to congratulate me on my pregnancy. We chatted for a bit, and he asked why I wasn't eating. I pointed out that Sil had accidentally served me shrimp, and Jamie reassured me not to worry. He took the plate from me, mentioning that he loved shrimp and would eat it instead. I smiled, nodded, and walked away. Not even 5 minutes later, Jamie started retching and vomiting violently. The entire room fell silent as people turned to look at him in concern. He struggled to get up, his face twisted in agony. Harry and Kayla immediately rushed to his side. Jamie pointed at his plate, then at his throat. A chill ran down my spine as we all realized something was terribly wrong. Moments later, Jamie collapsed. Gasps of horror filled the room. Kayla rushed to inspect his plate, and her eyes widened in shock. She turned to me and urgently asked if I had given Jamie my plate. I nodded, still in disbelief. Amidst the chaos, someone called an ambulance, and Jamie was rushed to the hospital. Kayla was inconsolable, sobbing hysterically while repeatedly shooting me looks of anger. Later, we received the horrifying news. Jamie had been poisoned. My heart nearly stopped. Unlike everyone else, I immediately grasped the horrifying truth. The plate had been meant for me. Whatever substance had poisoned Jamie could have harmed me and my unborn child. Harry, Mill, Phil, and my parents were still unaware of this revelation. The police arrived to collect Jamie's food as evidence, since no one knew what had caused his reaction. As I sit here typing this, Jamie is still recovering in the hospital, with Kayla staying by his side overnight. My husband and I have been bombarded with calls from relatives, all asking what happened and whether someone deliberately poisoned Jamie. Mill and Phil are deeply shaken by the ordeal and have decided to stay with us, too afraid to return home. No one can comprehend how such a tragic incident unfolded so suddenly when everything had been going so well. I am terrified to admit to everyone that the poisoned plate had originally been meant for me. If this turns into a full-blown investigation, I will have to tell the police the truth. I feel an overwhelming sense of guilt, but more than that, I am now utterly fearful of what Sil might be capable of. She had no hesitation in attempting to poison me. I cannot be around her, nor can I allow my children anywhere near her. Am I the one at fault for handing my plate to Jamie and inadvertently endangering my brother-in-law? Update 1. Wow, I am astounded by the sheer number of responses. thousands of comments in just a few hours. My hands were shaking when I first wrote this, and I haven't been able to sleep. Despite what everyone is saying, I can't shake off the guilt I feel for what happened to Jamie. I keep replaying the moment in my mind. I should have simply discarded the plate. I don't know why I let him take it from me. I can't stop crying, terrified of what could happen to him. My husband senses something is wrong and has been hovering near me. He assumes I'm just anxious, but he has no idea what I truly know about his sister. Many of you suggested that I gather my family and have an honest discussion. I agree. I don't know if they'll believe me, but thankfully, Mill and Phil have security cameras all around their house. Since the party took place in their backyard, I'm certain they can review the footage and verify that Sil was the one who handed me the plate. I will talk to everyone tonight and update again. Update 2. We had the conversation, and I am beyond grateful to have the most supportive in-laws. Since Mill and Phil were already staying with us, I sat down with them and Harry during dinner and told them I had something crucial to discuss. Taking a deep breath, I recounted the events of the party, the plate, Sil's actions, and how Jamie had unknowingly eaten the poisoned food. As I spoke, I could see the shock and disbelief on their faces, mirroring my own horror. Mill and Phil exchanged worried glances, their concern evident. Meanwhile, Harry's expression darkened, shifting from confusion to fury. I continued voicing my concerns about Sil's intentions and her past attempts to harm me. I confessed my reluctance to disclose this information, fearing the possible repercussions for myself and our unborn child. Mill, being the pragmatic woman she was, instantly proposed checking the security camera recordings. Phil nodded in agreement, realizing the gravity of the situation. Harry, though visibly shaken, remained silent, processing the shocking revelation. Upon reviewing the footage from their security app, the truth became undeniable. The recording clearly captured Sil offering me the tainted plate, followed by the distressing chain of events that led to Ja's suffering. The weight of the evidence left no room for doubt. Emotions ran high as the realization sank in. Harry, now fully aware of his sister's malevolent intent, struggled to contain his fury. Mill and Phil were horrified by their daughter's actions, stunned by the extent she had gone to in order to create chaos. We sat in a heavy silence, grappling with the incomprehensible nature of her actions. In the aftermath of this shocking discovery, my in-laws decided to hand the evidence over to the authorities, recognizing the severity of the situation. Phil and my husband planned to visit Jamie once he recovered, as he was the one who needed to press charges against Sil. I have no idea how Jamie will react, and every time I think about how I unwittingly gave him my poisoned plate, I feel overwhelmed with guilt. I struggle to sleep or eat properly, consumed by worry for him. I will update you when something significant unfolds. Update 3. Hey everyone, I'm finally back with an update. I know it has been a month since my last post, but as a pregnant woman going through immense stress, I needed time. First and foremost, my in-laws handed the security footage to the police, and after reviewing the evidence, Sil was promptly arrested. Kayla didn't even attempt to deny the accusations. Instead, she broke down in tears and confessed to everything. My husband had a serious conversation with Jamie, who was just as shocked as the rest of us. My husband urged him to take legal action against his sister, emphasizing the gravity of what she had done. He also reassured Jamie that, regardless of his decision, he would always be considered family. In the end, once Jamie recovered, he not only decided to press charges, but also filed for divorce. Kayla later called Mill and Phil, sobbing, pleading for their forgiveness. As it turns out, she is pregnant herself. She begged them to bail her out, trying to manipulate them by appealing to their sense of duty toward their future grandchild. However, Phil firmly told her that they were done enabling her and that she needed to finally take accountability for her own actions. Mill is heartbroken over what has become of her daughter, but she understands that Kayla's actions are beyond mere mistakes. They cannot simply be overlooked. The police found further proof that she had deliberately tampered with the food, intending to harm me. Ironically, her plan backfired, injuring her own husband instead. She has been charged with multiple offenses, including food contamination, endangering lives, and causing bodily harm. She has continued pleading with Jamie to drop the charges, blaming me for everything. But fortunately, Jamie remains resolute. His mind is made up, and he wants justice. Her trial will begin soon, and this time, there's no escaping the consequences. For those asking about me and my baby, we are doing well. Our son remains unaware of what his aunt has done. Harry and I have decided that, when the time is right, we will have an honest conversation with him so he can recognize and be cautious of such situations in the future. It won't be an easy discussion, but it's a necessary one. As for my pregnancy, I'm undergoing regular ultrasounds every 2 weeks, as advised by my doctor. We've chosen not to find out the baby's gender. We want it to be a surprise. My parents, after learning about everything with Kayla, have become incredibly protective of me. They are concerned about how this might affect my mental well-being during pregnancy and have encouraged me to seek therapy. I agree with them. Despite appearing normal on the surface, I've developed a deep-rooted fear of food. Ever since Kayla tampered with my meal, I've been unable to trust anything I haven't prepared myself. My husband is incredibly supportive, and I hope with time and therapy, I can overcome this irrational fear. Update 4. It has been 8 months since my last update. Kayla is currently serving time in prison. She was found guilty on all charges. I never attended the court proceedings, but my in-laws did from time to time, and they relayed what happened. Kayla admitted in court that she had harbored jealousy toward me for years. She never wanted an outsider to marry her brother. She had always envisioned one of her closest friends as his future wife. When he started dating me, she resorted to bullying, hoping to push me away. During my husband's birthday party, when we announced our pregnancy, she was overcome with resentment. She had planned to announce her own pregnancy that same night, but our revelation stole what she believed was her moment to shine. Having previously suffered a miscarriage, she wanted to share her joy with everyone. But in her mind, we had overshadowed her. According to her testimony, she blamed pregnancy hormones for her extreme reaction. In a fit of rage, she mixed a small amount of rat poison into my food, intending to make me ill enough to require hospitalization. She claimed she never meant to cause physical harm to me or the baby. However, when I unknowingly gave my plate to her husband, she watched in horror as her plan backfired. She even argued that, since I was the one who switched the plates, I had effectively poisoned her husband and that she deserved a lighter sentence. Of course, the judge dismissed her absurd reasoning. In the end, she was sentenced to prison, and she will remain out of our lives for a long time. Jamie successfully finalized the divorce and is finally free. We've stayed in touch, including him in family gatherings whenever possible. He and I have spoken in depth, and I've repeatedly apologized for unknowingly putting him in harm's way. But he reassured me that it was never my fault. Hearing him say that lifted a burden I had been carrying for so long. As for me and Harry, we have since welcomed a beautiful baby girl into our family. Despite the dark past, her presence has brought immeasurable joy into our lives. Our son, Nate, is ecstatic about becoming a big brother, showering his little sister with love and affection. Watching them bond fills our hearts with gratitude. Throughout everything, my parents and in-laws have stood by us, supporting us as we embrace this new chapter. Though shadows of the past still linger, our family is stronger than ever, and we are moving forward, determined to leave the pain behind.